You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast. Stories of overcoming obstacles and finding self-empowerment with Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader.
Hi everyone, welcome back. So I did take a little week off last week, because I just feel like it's really important always that I practice what I preach. And I was just feeling last week quite overwhelmed with lots of things that I was doing. And I like to come into this space of recording to I guess really, I'm kind of brain dumping on you a little bit. It's like all of the things from the week that I've accumulated or that have made sense for me. And I like to share it with you so you get a really clear idea of like what I'm navigating through, what's coming to the surface for my clients and things like that. And I just feel like last week I was really being called to pause. Like that was really the clear message for me was surrender, rest, and recharge really. And I wanted to say that at the beginning of this because I think it's important that you know that I don't just say what I say for the sake of it, right? I'm actually living it all of the time. And to even reiterate that a bit more, I noticed over the last few days that I'd not been sleeping as well as I normally do. Now, I sleep fine when I'm actually asleep, but before I was getting to sleep, I found myself like overthinking lots of things and just going into those holes of like trying to plan ahead, what we do as humans, right? So I literally was yesterday was like, okay, if I'm feeling already like in my nighttime wind down routine that I've got more thoughts in my head than normal. So I'm going to do what I tell my clients to do and just write things down before I go to bed. And honestly, I just sunk straight into sleep. I literally just went straight to sleep. Now, my plan normally is when I'm doing my wind down routine is that I do a little stretch and then I do my somatic movements to release out any trauma or tension stored in the body. And then I do a meditation and then go to sleep. So what I did this time was after I'd done my somatic movement, I then journaled, then did my meditation. So it was kind of everything I do is, like I've said to you before, is like a baby. It's like dinner, bath, bed, and I'm doing my own version of that as an adult and it works, and this is so important. It's like, you might not have the same way round that you do your evening routine or morning routine, but it is important you have something in place that tells your mind we're shutting down now, right? And if you do really struggle to close down at night and you are doing that already, what I do is I tell myself in my head, okay, we're shutting down now, and then I imagine like a cloak coming down from my top of my head through my eyebrows all the way down my body, and I just imagine that cloak is just covering me, and by the time it gets to the bottom I have fallen asleep. So it is a really nice way for you to kind of think about that if that's going to be helpful. And I just randomly thought of that, telling you that. It wasn't the reason I was going to come on to record a podcast today, but I think it's all these little nuggets of wisdom that we pick up from people that make a real difference, right? I'm sure my evening routine and my morning routine is an amalgamation of all of the things that I've learned just in my life in general, doing this work. So I think that, yeah, it's important that I share that with you because it's the truth, right? And I think what's becoming really clear to me more and more in this work that I do is how much I am living in integrity. And this isn't to be like an arrogant thing, but it's to be transparent with the fact that there's still a lot of noise in a lot of spaces. And I think as a human, you can feel when someone's being honest with you. And again, this is a real thing for us as women. Our intuition knows. She knows. So when you say to me, I have a feeling that my partner might be cheating on me, or I have a feeling that they're being dishonest, you probably are correct. Now, when you might not be correct is when you have been in situations where, for example, say you've watched a line of women get cheated on, maybe it's mums, grandmums, or friends, and then you've adopted that ideology that men cheat, and then you've believed it based on something that isn't your own truth, but a truth you've watched. and then you're just copy and pasting that belief onto the person rather than actually truly feeling it. And there is a difference. And this is what I wanted to talk about today was, again, judgment versus discernment, but in the layers of when it comes to womanhood, right? So that's an example of something that's external outside of what I wanted to talk about, but equally it makes sense of the example. But what I wanted to talk about was how we are still in this society where bitchiness is still a thing, right? Grown ass women being bitchy. I'm like, girl, get get a life, right? Grow up, please, because it's not it, right? And I've said this before, and I said this yesterday because I met up with the charity that I work with, Our Dance, and we were having a beautiful conversation about everything, right? And this topic came up about how there still are other women in the world living this way that is, toxic masculine, also toxic feminine, that need to manipulate to get what you want. That is all of these toxic versions of our divine energy selves. And what I noticed is that there are the younger generation to me, so the Gen Zs, there's some really innovative, aware Gen Zs in this world, right? And they don't buy into that mean girl mentality. They just don't. They're like, oh, no, no, I don't do that. They don't judge. They're thinking about the world. They're thinking about different cultures, different backgrounds. And it's like, yes, that is a refreshing energy that we need. And one of the members of the charity were challenging me on that, thinking that, okay, but they are also struggling the most mental health. But I think that it's also that polarity, right? You've got more awareness, but then there's also more of the other stuff that comes with that, like life does, right? And I'm just giving that example, but everyone is obviously individual in this process, right? I'm not saying that all millennials are bitchy. They're not, because I'm not, right? But I have been. And I'll own that, because again, we follow what we know. And when you're in high school, it's the thing, right? You feel like that's your initiation. And I quite quickly learned that wasn't who I wanted to be. And so I didn't follow that narrative. But I'm not going to be completely a saint and say that I've never done it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's humanness. But this is where we need to discern, right? So I was thinking about how working with a charity, and particularly Avatara, who's the founder, she was, and I've told you this before, my only example of what healthy feminine leadership looked like. Never else in my whole career. So I met her when I was 29. So in my 29 years, I'd never, ever seen another female leader like her. She literally is the embodiment of divine feminine leadership. She understands people. She's empathetic. She's kind. She's considerate. She goes above and beyond for people within her boundaries, right? Clear communication. She's Spanish, so she doesn't mix her words as well, right? And I literally just remember being in her energy for the first time 4 years ago, right? I'm doing my master's degree, I'm in the lockdown, and I just remember being really taken by her, like, wow, this woman knows what she wants. She's clear on what she wants, and she is making sure we are all being heard. And that is just such a beautiful space. And then because I was on my way to see them yesterday, on the train, going the normal route that I used to go to Pineapple every day when I used to teach there for the last 2 years. And I was thinking about all of the other female bosses that I've had in my time, and when I say bosses, that could be agents, that could be choreographers, like, because obviously I was a dancer for 11 years. And yeah, I was thinking about all these examples, and I was thinking about this one example where this particular person could have given me more opportunities to lead, but they didn't, because they were so worried that I would outshine their leadership skills. And I would have done, like, I'll be honest with you, I would have done that. And I know that. But isn't it funny that people will cap themselves, and especially women will cap themselves at that point when everyone could grow together? Everyone could absolutely grow together. And I think as well, what's really important I want to say is, when you're in a leadership position and someone can do the job just as good as or better than you, pass over the torch, right? And then you get to sit back. Because the goal in life is, if you're building an empire, you don't want to single-handedly run it your whole life, right? The goal is eventually to pass over the responsibility to someone else. Then you can do more of what you want, right? At the beginning stage of a business, you have to do everything. But, as you build upwards, you get to pass it over. And that's, again, what I've watched with the charity. But what I don't see so much in normal life, and especially in the dance industry. I mean, it's only now starting to happen because all of the dancers that I trained with or were in the same kind of age and bracket with are now getting to a point where they are older themselves, so they're not dancing and choreographing as much as they were when they were younger. So they are taking more director roles or choreographing and then directing rather than dancing too. But I feel like there's still these like toxic woven ideals that someone's going to come in and take my thing, even though the loyalty might have been built. And that comes from our subconscious patterns really as women. And it is the sisterhood wound again, and I've spoken about this before. But what I really want you to do in this, from this and this discernment here piece, is that I want you to make sure in everything that you are doing that it is your choice and your opinion on someone versus what someone else told you to believe. So if I make that really transparent in a clear example, it would be like at school, for example, and this could be a workplace scenario as well that this is playing out. So let's talk about it at school. So if at school there was a girl that had, I don't know, shoes that you didn't like, right? And then someone told you in the class, oh, she's she stole them shoes, for example, right? Then someone else might say, "Oh, did you hear she stole them shoes? Oh, she's a thief, she is, because she stole them shoes." Can you see how this gets passed down? So then by the time it gets to you, there's about 4 or 5 people that have told you she's stolen them shoes. You don't know if she has or not, but you're judging her based on what someone else has told you, right? Discernment would be you're having a conversation with that person and they might have told you they stole the shoes. Yeah. And then if they're not a very nice person, you might then decide, do you know what? She's a thief and she's not very nice. I'm not going to associate myself with that person. But what you are doing if you don't discern is you're judging someone else based on someone else's opinion. Yeah. And even down to your own personal judgment of someone versus the discernment of them. Judgment looks like, um, you stole that, you're a thief, I don't want anything to do with you. Discernment looks like you made poor choices that don't align with my values, therefore I don't want to be around you. Right? So discernment always comes back to our values and how someone mirrors that back to us. So if you don't know what your values are, that should be the first thing that you're doing right now. So get a pen and paper if you can, write it down in your phone. What are your key values as a human being? Mine are integrity, and I talk about integrity with you all the time, right? Because it's so important to me that people are saying the truth, and they're standing in what they believe in rather than just pretending. Because with social media, we see it all the time. This outward projection of, what people we want people to believe we are instead of actually being it. So integrity is mine, family, connection, community, empathy and understanding. That's a big one of mine. And you can have millions of them, right? I say millions, probably not millions. Let's say you have at least 5 core values that you stand by, to a full. So then if someone doesn't align with that, maybe it's someone that is trying to think of one of my other values. Um Maybe family, maybe it's that this person has severed all ties with their family for their own choice, but it's not one that feels healthy to you. So, for example, if that person said that their family are all toxic and they just cut them all off, so they didn't want to be around them, and then I dug deeper and I was just like, okay, well, tell me more about that. Like, let's discuss. Because again, I don't judge people on what's happened in their lives because I'm not that person, right? And I think in the work that I do, you have to be really open-minded with a lot of different scenarios. But it could be that the family, for example, wanted the best of them, wanted to help them in everything that they were doing, but they decided that they wanted to do it all on their own, and they thought that their family didn't believe in them, so they decided to run away and leave them. But then now they're saying, I've got no one around me. But it's like, make that bridge and that connection. Now, why that's important to me and why it connects with my values is because I've lost a lot of people, right? That most of you know, 11 members of my family passed away between the ages of 12 to 17. And then now that's like, doubled or tripled because I have a big family, and family is so important to me, right? So when I feel like people are taking that for granted, that really upsets me. Now, you can completely disassociate from your family if they are not nice people and they are not treating you the way you deserve, and or there's more toxic things happening. I don't expect you to just be connected with your family because they're your family, right? I want to make that very clear. But that they're the links that I look out for as to whether I associate with people or not. And I'm talking about in friendships and social groups. Clients are very different. My values don't need to align as much with my clients because I'm here to help them through their journey. But what tends to happen is their values do align with mine in some way, because otherwise we wouldn't be drawn to each other, right? And that is most of the time what happens with friendships. But if you're someone that feels like you don't know who you are, you're probably finding yourself in this murky water quite often, right? Where you're meeting these random people and they're coming in and they might be not treating you very nicely, or their attitude might be a bit off. And you're like, why is that, right? And it's because there's a misalignment of values somewhere. And the beautiful thing about your growth, and the more you dive into your own self-awareness and discernment, the clearer this all becomes, right? And I've noticed myself in my evolution that the more I began to heal and my values became clearer with integrity and honesty and empathy, I had to push back on a few people because I realized that some of my friends that I'd built long-term relationships with, they weren't in that space where they were being honest or empathetic or anything like that. So I'm just having a sip of my tea because this is life, we're doing this for real time things. Again, integrity. You're just like all rolling your eyes at me like, right, okay, Sherisse, fine. But it is the importance of this is the fact that you're constantly evolving, right? Every day in every single way, you are constantly evolving. So what I would love for you to do is to be really clear on yourself and pull yourself up on when you are making a judgment versus a discernment, right? So again, just to reiterate, the judgment is just, you're judging someone based on knowledge or whatever it is, maybe your own interpretation, your own opinion of someone. But the discernment is the alignment of values, right? So you're saying, does that person's value align with mine before I make a choice or a decision on someone? And I think that another thing about discernment, which should be clear, is that you can talk about someone's behavior patterns and how they navigate life in a conversation. That would be, you are discerning where they stand in your life or why you made a choice on someone because of that, versus I don't want to talk to her, she's a liar, she does this, she does that. That's all judgment, that's shame, and that's blame, and that's projection a lot of the time of your own stuff onto someone, right? So this is where this work is so important, because we don't realize, but especially if you're a parent or you're around younger people, they are absorbing that from you, right? And I remember obviously my grandma is from Guyana, so Caribbean, fiery, yeah. That's just part of their culture, that they are judgmental. They have nicknames for people that do certain things, right? Very toxic. But again, that's the society that they all grew up in and lived in. And what you have to remember as well with this is that a lot of the people from the Caribbean, well, everyone from the Caribbean that is native to there, has been a slave of some form, right? So there is oppression through the roots of what these people have been through. And I think it's important for me to say that, because the involvement of characterization, understanding, discipline, and discernment versus judgment is all very different because of the fact that they have grown from the edge of a cliff, right? Instead of nice solid soil like British people born and raised in the UK. So that this understanding of culture, sorry, not culture, of humanity and humanisms, I don't know if that's a word, but what I'm talking about is like real character traits, is that they can only do the best they can with what they know. So, when my grandma came to the UK, she was still doing that, right? And like a lot of people do. And now, if she was still alive, I would be able to have that conversation with her and say, you know, that's not how we want to talk about people. And I've had to do that with my stepnan actually quite a few times, which has been really refreshing actually. And she takes it on board, which is really lovely. And especially my mum, like she literally absorbs, as I'm saying things. And it's really wonderful now because my mum gives great advice to people. And she always says, oh, Sherisse told me this. And like, how wonderful is that? Right, I'm not doing this for my ego. Just let me just pull back a minute because it's not about me. But what I'm saying is we only know what we know. So what's important is we can get into the grassroots there, understand why we do what we do so that we don't have to do the things we don't want to do anymore. I remember being in a stage where I was judging people, or I might have said something that is judgmental and not feeling good about myself because of it. And that is exactly why, hurt people hurt people. It's this cycle that we're creating and perpetuating. So if we can stop that cycle in its track and start a new one that aligns with values versus judging someone, again, the younger generation aren't going to grow up thinking that being mean is cool, right? Which a lot of them don't. So, hats off to the millennial parents that have been the ones to set the tone for that already. But there's still more to do, right? And it's not even about just the younger generation. It's about setting the tone for everywhere you are. So if we use that example in the office, I don't know, it could be, yeah, someone in the office has a quote unquote annoying voice, right? And then everyone's like, oh, voice goes straight through me, rah, 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 annoying. You just want to blame someone for something because your job is not very exciting, like that could be the cause of it. And actually, if everyone just put their headphones on and got on with their work, they wouldn't care about it as much. But we want to blame someone for something. So it feels easy to pass our judgment onto them rather than looking at ourselves and saying, am I actually happy in this job? Do I enjoy this space? Do I actually like that person? Because if I do like her, I shouldn't be talking about her. And if I'm not happy here in this job, I need to find something else that aligns with me, or ask to sit somewhere else if she's distracting me. And or if it's not her that's distracting me, but I keep listening to that girl that keeps moaning about her, I'm part of the problem. And I know that's a lot of accountability for one day. I know it is. But that's what's going to create the change in your life and in your world. There is a thing on a deeper level that is you can't heal from the same space that broke you. It's the same with you can't evolve from the same place that made you stuck, right? So if you're in a job that you hate and then you find yourself moaning about people and situations, which is the knock-on effect, right? That's the universe telling you need to move. If you're not taking those cues and you're staying stuck, that is your choice. And you are perpetuating your own cycle within that. And again, didn't mean to call you out, but also I did because this is hopefully going to invoke you making some shifts in your life. So, that's on a very macro level that affects you and it's clear and it's quite uncomfortable. But on a micro level, this just happens in friendships, like one friend will tell another friend, oh, she said this about me. So then you start to cast a judgment on that person, even though you didn't hear that person say it. One thing I've always said, and my friends know this, is I don't care if anyone's speaking about me behind my back. I really do not care. I promise you, hand on heart, I do not care. Because if anyone cared enough, they would tell me to my face. That's just it, right? Unless you come to me and say, you've been out of order, you've offended me, it's really not my concern, And then even in that, we unpack it. And that was even before I'd done my healing journey. I was like, okay, well, tell me what I've done then, please, because I need to know so I can make it right, or I can defend my corner. That's always been there, and granted it might have been a bit more aggressive, the delivery, but the principle's always been the same, really. And I think that's what's been nice with my growth and looking back, because sometimes I get caught up in, as we always do, like, oh, you know, I've only been doing this since this. And actually, when I look back at my life, my values have always been the same, right? There's always been the same values. Like, I've always hated lying. I've always hated fakeness. And that's exactly why I was always dubious about social media when I was younger, because I was like, I don't want to come on and pretend that everything's amazing when it's not. So what the very clear thing about that was, though, is I wasn't open enough to be vulnerable myself. That's one that's evolved over time. But I would say honesty, I feel like, yeah, that's deepened as a result of me being more transparent and honest in my vulnerability, right? I was taking it as like, are you lying? Are you not? But honesty is all of it, right? The vulnerability, the sincerity, the empathy, it's all interconnected, right? But most importantly, I think that what I'm trying to say is when you're clear on your values, you can discern whether you are judging or whether you are discerning between how you feel about someone, a situation, a circumstance, especially because, like I said to you before, everything we are as a result of what we've learned. So if you, and this goes for, so I did unconscious bias training over the last few weeks for the charity. And again, I'm quite clued up on this, but it's really wonderful to go back through and relearn it. And I think there's lots of courses online for it. And I definitely recommend everyone to do it at some point in their life. They were just talking about how everyone is kind of grown up with unconscious biases, and the primary source of where we learn this is obviously from our families, our homes, churches, places like that. So again, with like this unconscious bias, is that if you've always believed something that someone said, for example, your mum or your dad or an older relative, or the church, for example, if you've always believed exactly what it said, the way someone was delivering it, you're not then discerning what is right for you. You're taking someone else's judgment or knowledge and you're applying it into your life when it's not necessarily yours. So a beautiful example of discernment would be that you went to church your whole life, and then now you're picking up, maybe you've disconnected from religion a little bit, and then you've gone back in, but you're now looking at it from a different lens as an adult and seeing how it applies to you. And then you're able to use the parables and verses in the Bible to connect with what makes sense to you now. That's a beautiful full circle of how you've been able to find discernment in something that was maybe, yeah, given to you without your consent at the beginning, right? It could even be that, you always believed everything your mum said. And then as you start to grow as a human and as an adult, you start to think, oh, that's a bit off, actually. Like maybe she said, oh, don't eat something because it's not good for you. I don't know. Maybe don't eat that because it's yucky. I'm just giving a random example. And then as you've gotten older, you've tried the food and you're like, this isn't yucky at all. And this isn't actually that bad for me. So I'm going to eat it now based on my choice. And then just tell your mum, yeah, I do like to eat that actually every now and again. It's okay. So everything's in moderation. Because this is something, again, that I feel like I've gone round in a circle here. But as much as you learn from your elders, they also learn from you. So just because something's been done one way forever doesn't mean that you can not try a new way and then follow suit. And I'm saying that from my absolute experience because that's been my life. Everything that I was taught, I've decided to do it a new way, right? So, and I don't want anyone to think, oh, well, you're a one-off example. Rah, rah, rah. It's not that at all. You just have to be brave enough to say, I don't want to do that. As I said, Caribbean family, I'm vegetarian. Decided to go vegetarian in the lockdown, and I was so scared to do it, and I wanted to go vegetarian for a long time. I was so scared because I didn't want to be that hard work person. And then luckily one of my cousins went vegan just before me, and he's like 10 years older than me, so I feel like he's obviously led the pathway a little bit there. But in my immediate family, I thought it'd be really hard, but I cook, so I'm always happy to bring my own stuff. I'm happy to cook for people. And it's been easy. And actually, people accommodate to me now because of it. And now my family have, vegetarian meals 4 to 5 times a week with me, So that's just a small example of how you can create change. But mindset shifts, breaking cycles, that's the big stuff. I've been doing it for a long time, and they don't notice the shift until they get into a conversation with someone else and they're like, we're doing this different, aren't we? I'm like, yeah, we are. So yeah, that's all a full circle moment of what I'm trying to say, is that when you know your values and you can tune into what they are, you are making a decision and you are discerning based on that understanding rather than judging for the sake of it or what you've been taught before or someone else's opinion. So, yes, I am wishing you a really beautiful week. And if you have any questions, as always, let me know. I do still have the replay of my Iconic Leader workshop. So, anyone that's thinking, oh, I'm feeling a little bit flat or I just need a boost, this is for you. So, come back to that. That link is in my bio. Also, anyone that's feeling called to do this work, like maybe that self-judgment thing or judging others is something that's really key for you, the self-study is in the links as well in the description there. And as always, I am here. If you have a question, if you want to find out how to work with me on a one-to-one basis, again, like I said before, I'm now doing 6 months or 12 months. So if you feel like you're ready for that journey and you're thinking that something needs to shift in my life and I'm ready for that shift, please do drop me a DM on social media. My link's below. Drop me an email. Because this work really is the life-changing transformation that you've been calling for. When you stop judging everyone else, you stop judging yourself, right? And that's actually something I wanted to say, is that when you are judging others, you are judging yourself. And if you're not judging yourself, that makes you a narcissist. Mic drop. Okay? So you're either judging yourself and others or you're being a narcissist. Because that's the only other way that you're looking at everyone else's stuff, blaming them and not taking accountability. And I don't think you're that, right? So if you are thinking, wow, that's a massive thing, yes, I need to look at this, Rise will be the space for you. And that's where I'm walking with you in this. We're having calls when you need them. I'm always available to voice note, to text, like it's a very collaborative experience. So you don't feel on your own in life, right? When these things come up to the surface, you can be like, oh my God, Sherisse, yes, I'm in this right now. Like, let's talk about it, right? And that's a beautiful space that I want to hold for you. So wishing you a wonderful week, and I will speak to you real soon.
If this episode resonated with you, please do like, follow and share with someone that you know would benefit. If you're looking to dive in deeper to becoming your most unapologetic, most authentic, shining self, please do head to my website and join my newsletter, where you'll find out about all of my upcoming events and speaking opportunities and all of the things that I have going on. And also, if you would like to work with me, please do drop me a DM on any of my socials or through my website. Love and light.